Thank you all for joining us today for this incredible launch of our newest course, the VA S.A.V.E. Preventing Caregiver Suicide. We're going to hold tight here for just a minute and then start. We'll probably go at about 3:02. Really excited to see everyone joining on. Wow, up to 71, everyone. Thanks for coming on board, whether it's at the end of your day or right at dinner time. I think we're covering all time zones. Pacific, Central, Eastern. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, you're still Pacific too, Amy. I'm like, who's Mountain Time Zone? We don't have that. So welcome, everyone. Oh, here's Eastern. Yay. Okay. Yeah, everyone put in the chat where you're coming in from. Oh, we have Katie here. Everyone, Katie B, who is instrumental in being a course creator. Welcome, Katie. So glad you could join. Hi, Roxana. So before I kick off with my introductions, I am going to do a real quick housekeeping for those of you who have joined our caregiver webinars in the past. When we say conversation, we mean that. When I facilitate, I love to talk to all of you. We are here for you. We have incredible panelists, and we have all of our incredible people who are joining online. So in our opportunity to ask questions about the material, ask our panelists questions, I'll give you two choices. If you go in the open chat, I might call on you. And if you would rather stay private, then please go ahead and instant message or DM, whatever we call it in Zoom land, over to our panelists, and we will keep your question confidential, but then answer it. But just want to give everyone a heads up. Like, I already saw Roxana's name. So if Roxana asked a question, and be like, hey, Roxana, thanks for that question. So just like to provide everyone that privacy or not. So welcome aboard. So it's 3:08 or 3:03. Gosh, and I got my glasses on. Welcome, everyone. Once again, thanks for joining us. We are already up to 90 strong. I'm going to kick our time off together right now, as we have so much to talk about, and we're going to launch our course, or at least a snippet of our course, with you today. So thank you all for being here for this discussion. And this is not only foundational to our mission at PsychArmor, but as you're going to hear, that I'm going to say this over and over again, this is just really, really dearly close to my heart. This military and veteran caregiver suicide prevention course has been something that has been at the top of our conversation at PsychArmor, and with all of our incredible partners that are here today with us since I've been on board. That's been almost 3 years. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Tina Atherall. It's probably a great place to go back to, right? And yes, I'm the proud CEO at PsychArmor, and so excited to be here with our panelists to discuss this very difficult, or not, because of this course, important issue. So we're launching the PsychArmor's newest course, the VA S.A.V.E. Preventing Caregiver Suicide. And I hope that so many of you already on this call are aware of this exceptional course that we have had launched for several years. With everybody that's on this call has had a part of that. But over the years, we knew we needed to do more. So thanks so much for the sponsorship of the USAA Foundation. This course is going to bring awareness to our military and veteran caregivers and provide simple tools to prevent caregiver suicide. This is for our caregivers. So thanks to the panelists. I feel like we've all been like rooting for this and just waiting for this day. So we're here today. To have you here really does not only show your strong commitment, but your work and everything that you have done over the years to make sure that we're ensuring the well-being of our caregivers, who are important, absolutely part of the fabric of our military service and our country. So I'm going to go through some introductions. Oh, hey, Marianne, I see you. I see you at Elizabeth Dole Foundation here in San Diego. Thanks for joining us. We are going to do introductions of our panelists, because what I'm hoping is that there's some of you on this call that may not know them, and now you will. So I'm not going to skip the formal introductions. We're going to go through it so you can make sure you can see who these key individuals are that are with us today and why it's so critical to the launch of this course. So first we have Justin Schmidt, who is joining us here from USAA. In his role, he is our Senior Deputy of Corporate Social Responsibility, and he directs the Foundation's corporate citizenship investments through purposeful collaboration, that's us, and corporate initiatives that positively impact our nation's military families and USAA's local communities. So y'all got that right. When we asked him, would he do this with us? He said yes, and he helped us with the resources to get that done. Meg Cabot, a social worker that I have literally like idled my entire career. I know she doesn't like it when I do that, but I absolutely have to every time that I'm here to present her with her. Over 25 years of supporting American service members, veterans, and their families. Meg currently serves as the Senior Advisor for Families, Caregivers, and Survivors at the Office of the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. So that means so much to me because I know from where she's come from and how far she's taken this conversation. So thank you, Meg. So in this role, she is the principal advisor on family caregiving to senior leaders across the VA, and she's responsible for critical and sensitive national policy development and program oversight. So if any of my students have logged in today, I hope you're taking note of exactly where policy absolutely influences our practice, because that's happening today. Amy Johnson, yep, I'm going to say another social worker. Welcome, Amy. She joins us also from the Department of Veterans Affairs in the Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention at the Veterans Health Administration, leading public and private partnerships to prevent veteran suicide. And guess what else? Caregiver suicide, because that's why we're here today. But her work extends beyond VA partnerships that brings communities across the country together to increase safe firearm storage for veterans, their families, and communities to prevent suicide. And you're going to hear more about that today. Anybody that's here joining us from the Governor's Challenge, you know Amy really well. And this is also another great example of how this embeds into communities. Steve Schwab, our board chairman and CEO at the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. He's a national leader and the voice for the nation's 5.5 million military and veteran caregivers and their families. He works closely to advise senior leaders in every sector and audiences across the country, and has testified before Congress about the challenges faced by our Americans' military caregivers and how our nation can do more to support these incredible hidden heroes. I am sure, and I hope that many of you also know the really important work that just came out from Steve and the team and many others here on this call for our hidden helpers, which are military kids. So when we say influence senior leaders, that's exactly what Steve does. So welcome, Steve. And again, I said board chairman, and I did mean that at S.A.V.E. And we're going to round off with Melissa. Yay, she looks like she's in Tel Aviv, I think she said, but no, she's really in Houston. So it's just a great background. I'm hoping many of the caregivers that are here today know her. If not, you need to. She's the director of American Red Cross Military Veteran Caregiver Network. She's an author, so make sure you're Googling her right now. Go to Amazon, and she's a caregiver. She served as an Arizona fellow for the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. Is everyone seeing how we all cross all over, like we make sure that we're all working together, and is recognized as an advocate for military and veteran community. And she continues to support caregivers through the American Red Cross Military Veteran Caregiver Network. You're also going to see she's like the rock star in this video, along with our Dr. Heidi Kraft. So wait till you see this. We did that, right? But I think this is so important that everybody really gets to know the amazing individuals that are here today that have been a part of creating this course. Also, a big shout out to the Psych Armor team. You'll see Dr. Heidi Kraft and Dr. Carrie Rogers. They're instrumental in building out this course, and other individuals like Leah Christensen at the VA. So thank you all for joining us today. So are you ready, panelists? Are we ready to dig into a conversation? All right. I'm going to first start with Megan and Amy, because we've talked so much about how this came out of the VA. And I wondered if I could kick it off to both of you first, just to talk about why is this a priority to VA? And when I say this, obviously we mean looking at preventing caregiver suicide. And I'll ask Meg to start.
Thank you. And thank you, Tina, for hosting us and really starting out this important conversation. So, I think because I've been here at VA for a while now, with the short break there for a little bit, one of the things that I've really gotten to witness is that when I started here back in 2008, and we started to talk about caregiver support, we would say things like, we should support caregivers, it's the right thing to do, they've given up so much, they deserve our support. And now we know through a lot of research and a lot of partnership and collaboration that when we support caregivers, we're actually supporting veterans, that supporting caregivers leads directly to improved outcomes for veterans. They receive more care. They have, there's all kinds of research out there. We know that supporting veterans helps decrease the anxiety of the children in the home. So I think that, to sort of answer your question directly, the reality is that we need to support caregivers, including the mental health of the caregivers, in order really to make sure that we're providing the best care to the veterans. None of us live in isolation, and we need to prepare our caregivers to know how to navigate mental health challenges that the veteran they're caring for may be experiencing, but also to navigate the mental health challenges that other people in their community may be facing as well, or their own challenges. I'm sure we'll talk about peer support as we talk about this. And so caregivers need to be armed with the tools to support one another as they're facing mental health challenges, all the way through and including suicidal thoughts and suicidal actions. So Amy, do you want to add something there?
Sure, I'm happy to. Thanks for that. And I'm so glad that we have such a fantastic representation today. I've been watching all the different locations that people are joining us from. What I would say to add in is that, we can provide the best love, support, attention, care, managing healthcare, mental health care, when we ourselves are in our best place. So I think, the more that we can encourage caregivers to reflect on their own mental health, spiritual health, emotional and physical health, the better off, like Meg said, their whole families are, and their caregiving role then is boosted and can be better managed. There's some specific things that we think that everyone can do to help prevent suicide. We certainly do not think that you have to have certain letters behind your name or be in a certain type of work in order to prevent suicide. Today, there's things that we can all do. We can make sure that we know how to access treatment in our local community, especially if we can't get care from VA because we're not a veteran, or maybe there's some other reason why. So accessing local healthcare and mental health care, substance abuse care for those of us who might be struggling with substance use is important. But also we can secure things like firearms or other lethal means in our home today when we get off the phone today. We know that for veterans as well as for civilians, firearm suicide is our largest challenge, but there's things that we can do to securely store safely firearms either in the home or outside the home. So thanks for the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to any questions that folks may have and to continuing the conversation. Thanks.
Well, and I'll just add to that, especially to when we look at who's in our chat, there's so many that are from the VA. And I know from our relationship, which is going to extend over to my question, Justin, in just a second, being a part of all of your efforts to build out this program within VA, the incredible care team that's supporting the caregivers in the community, they're showing up here today, right? So this is a tool for all. And when we get to the peer-to-peer, we get to what can this training do? I'm really excited to see the great audience that's here today, because that's what it's meant for all of you. And I think the embeddedness within the VA staff to also utilize this in the way that they have has really been exciting. So Justin, that's where I'm going to kick it over to you to say, we want to say, why is this important for funding? But I'd like to also just mention, you were the one who understood that our work in supporting caregivers on their needs really mattered years ago. And that's where we began to build out many different levels of educational tools. So when it came to partnering with the VA and continuing this work, do you want to share with us from the foundation perspective why this was important for you all?
Absolutely. And first, just let me extend just a heartfelt thanks to everyone who's on the line today, and for all of the military and veteran caregivers who are participating, and thank you for what you do for your families and for our country. I really want to give, credit to the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and SAVE, because they were probably the two leading nonprofits in our country that mobilized meaningful support for military caregivers when it was still a kind of an unknown opportunity. The Elizabeth Dole Foundation and their incredible research in 2014 that really framed the opportunity to better support our nation's military community by supporting military and veteran caregivers was an eye-opener. And it really influenced us at USAA. In fact, in 2014, we articulated a strategic pillar of philanthropic support for military and veteran caregivers as a result of how moved we were with the opportunity and the research. And the Dole Foundation certainly is a huge engine that supports military and veteran caregivers in our country. But what SAVE has done is, providing custom, credible, honest educational material tailored for military and veteran caregivers. And we helped the organization stand that up in 2016. And this latest chapter that we're announcing tonight just reflects how that continues to mature and to stay relevant, and to recognize that for our military to thrive, the whole family unit needs to thrive, and each and every one of you are a huge part of how important our military community is, and for that you have our extreme gratitude and respect.
Well, thank you, Justin, because when we also said we needed to expand and this was so important, it was we didn't even have to wait for an answer. It was just go do it. So thank you. And we were talking about this before we came on board. We're launching this today, but this has been a project, again, that has just been in the making for a while, right? Like it takes time. And to your point around the evidence-informed and the evidence-based education that we know works. And so I know I'm very grateful that people trust us and to use these tools. And so this is also a great thing to say. This has been in the building, but Steve, here we are. We're still in the midst of a pandemic. We've been going through this for the last 2 years. You've been doing a lot of work to highlight the needs and challenges, the increased needs on the caregiver community. Do you want to share with us just, what you're seeing and how this is going to be so timely and important, even though we started it before we knew we'd be going through this now. But, can you talk about what you've been seeing and how you know that we'll be using this in the future?
Yeah, Tina, thanks. And to all those listening in tonight, wherever you are in the country, and it's been so nice to see the different parts of our nation represented in the chat room. As Justin said, thank you for your service, your selfless service to this country. Justin said something else that I want to touch on, Tina, that segues really nicely into your question. We're getting ready to celebrate a big milestone at the Dole Foundation next year in their 10th anniversary. And our mission is a personal one, personal because our founder, Senator Elizabeth Dole, continues today to be an active veteran caregiver for her husband, Bob, as he battles service-connected injuries and right now stage 4 cancer. So, we are inspired by the work she does every day for her veteran to serve and support caregivers like you all better and more effectively. The problem has been for many of us in the field, and Justin mentioned the research that came out in 2014, is that we lack a lot of good evidence-based research, at least we did prior to 2014, to tell us where we needed to make investments to support you effectively. So we knew a little bit more when we came out with our study in 2014. We knew a lot more. But I want to touch on the issue of suicide because that's what we're here to talk about tonight. We're still in the midst of a pandemic, the likes of which this country hasn't seen in decades, probably has never seen. And you all know, and I want to speak for you. I'm not a caregiver myself. I work in the field. I work with caregivers like Melissa and folks on my team every single day. But I know that caregivers have been under pressure like they've never been under before. Your informal networks of care disappeared largely during the pandemic, and they were pretty small before that. And the pressures and the feeling of being home and isolated increased. And all of those things can increase suicide ideation. And fortunately, in the last year, a wonderful friend and colleague to me and to many of us, Dr. Roxana Delgado and Kimberly Peacock at UT San Antonio Health, that Justin, right in your backyard there, they did some really important and revealing research that for the first time said that suicide ideation among caregivers is really high as compared to the rest of the population and even to civilian caregivers. 24% of military and veteran caregivers have thought about suicide. And the rates of that ideation are even higher when a caregiver, as I'm sure many of you are, caring for someone with severe mental, mental and emotional wounds. And we've just scratched the surface. I don't want, I know Roxana's on here, so she's going to gut check me on this, but we need to do a lot more research. And I know that takes time, and I know you all are facing real issues right now, but we need to give Congress and communities, mayors, corporate leaders like Justin, government leaders like Meg and Amy, data on larger segments, diverse segments of the caregiver society, so that we can create programs, government programs, community programs, what have you, that support your needs in real time. Now, I'll touch on some of the things that became really evident in the pandemic. I mentioned isolation. We responded very directly to that at Dole Foundation with our partners at the VA. We stood up a respite program. We're now providing free respite care to any caregiver in all 50 states and in some US territories. We're going to put in the chat, we'll put the website for that program. It's called the Respite Relief Program. Thanks to our friends at CareLinks and USAA and Wounded Warrior Project. Wherever you are, if you're feeling isolated and alone and you need a break, we'll be there for you. And we know from the data that even 10 hours of respite care can make a significant difference in bringing down the mental and emotional health temperature of our caregivers. And the rates that we've been getting back and the surveys we've been getting back have been exponentially high in terms of its impact. So if you're a caregiver, and I know many of you are proud caregivers and you're reluctant to ask for help, put that proud reluctance to the side and go to our website or go to the Military and Veteran Caregiver Network website at Red Cross, or go to the VA or call the VA caregiver line. Come to us when you need some extra help, because the evidence that Roxana and the folks at San Antonio said, as those pressures increase, as isolation increases, as caregiving duties increase, as the pandemic fluctuates up and down, those suicide ideation rates go up. And that means that you've got to be proactive and preventative in procuring care like respite, or applying to us for financial support, or going to Melissa's incredible community to connect with your peers, or to ours at HHCC. But, and I'll conclude by saying this, I have this wonderful general physician who told me recently that 99% of health and work on one's health is health prevention, right? Is taking care of yourself, putting the oxygen mask on before you put it on or close to when you put it on to your veteran. And so that means doing what you need to take care of yourself. And that's what this course is all about. You're going to see the segment in Melissa's incredible facilitation of this course and PsychArmor's work on it. This course is for you. Our programs are for you. It's up to you to take the step to help yourself and help your veteran.
Steve, thank you. And thanks for adding in the research that we all need to be looking at, that we've placed it here in the chat. So those of you that will make sure that are here today, we'll make sure that we get you all of these links afterwards as well. You brought up Melissa's work. which is great as well around the peer to peer. And I wondered if, Melissa, you could take it, from where we've been, what are some of the things that you're seeing? I also know that when we've talked along the way, it's how do you implement this within your peer network? So we can combine two questions for you since they're so, perfect time together. What are you seeing amongst your caregiver networks? And then how do you utilize tools such as this course that will be launched to really support within these networks as you implement this information?
Thank you so much, Tina. It's so great to be with you all, friends, family, fellow caregivers. So the pandemic has been hard, and I'm going to touch back a little bit on the Hidden Heroes RAND research because social isolation was indicated as a huge barrier to caregivers getting the support that they needed. That peer-to-peer connection, having someone you can share your lived experience with. And that's really why the whole Military and Veteran Caregiver Network was created. We're using evidence-based best practice peer support programming to meet caregivers where they are and help them build that safety net of peers that they can go to on good days and bad. As far as I know, we are the only peer support program that also provides training for caregivers that might be in crisis, meaning we're training our fellow caregivers to be on the lookout for what you might be able to mirror or show a caregiver who is in crisis. And of course, how to get them to the resources and support that are going to matter most. I will tell you, we have had several times where we have three-way called the crisis line with one of our caregiver peers. We've had to stop peer support groups or peer support chats in order to get someone to the professional crisis support that they need. And that really is the ultimate role of peers. We can sit there, we can be there, we can listen, but when it gets elevated to the point of a crisis, a peer is very powerful at getting someone to the proper crisis intervention. And I'm very proud of that we've been able to do. The VA has also been instrumental. I have had caregivers tell me, my caregiver coordinator saved my life. How did they do that? Well, they just listened. They called in the middle of a crisis. That caregiver coordinator was able to maybe get them to crisis intervention as well. But then look at things like respite that Steve was mentioning. Where are the barriers? Where are the breaking points in this caregiver's life that are leading them to this crisis? And how do we meet them and support them? And you asked about how this all kind of comes together. So this tool that we created together, and I'm so honored to be a part of this, caregiver suicidality has been a real challenge. It's been something that we hear about all the time in our network, caregivers feeling done. I don't even want to wear a seatbelt anymore. Like if I could just get in a car accident, I could get a break. These are very dangerous things to be hearing, very real, very honest, and there are lots of support. So don't feel like you can't share those feelings. But what you do when someone shares that desperation, how do you get them wrapped in support and on a path to where they can feel better? Oftentimes, caregivers are thought of as the frontline support for a veteran suicide issue, completely discounting their own experiences and stresses. And in a lot of the work that I've done in the suicide prevention space, I'm constantly ringing that bell that yes, caregivers are extremely instrumental in supporting veteran suicide prevention, just like Amy said with locking firearms. That's something we can all do. Locking medications, ensuring someone doesn't drive while they're intoxicated. Caregivers step up to this all the time. But what isn't often recognized is that has an emotional toll in itself. And these caregivers need to be wrapped with great mental health support, great peer support, and crisis interventions that really speak to their experience.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm going to take a moment because it's actually a really great opportunity since we are talking so much around the topic of suicide to answer or address a question that has come in from one of our guests today. And so, Amy, I believe that this is a great opportunity to also talk about the content of this course as well as the research that it has been utilized to create these courses and around your content with mean safety. So we have an individual who wanted to see if we could talk about, what is it that we say when people have an opinion around suicide? And I'm just going to read it as this question was asked, that it's a valid choice for people who are suffering. And so could you address that in terms of some of those myths that we have around individuals who are suffering and they're going to take their life, whether or not you step in and present it or prevent it, et cetera.
Sure. So oftentimes people who are struggling themselves with thoughts of suicide will get to a place where they start to either convince themselves or they have symptoms of depression or other things going on in their life where they start to believe that this is the only answer. What we know about people who attempt suicide and survive is that 90% of the time, if we can save someone who has attempted suicide and they can live, they will live for the rest of their life. So we know that thoughts of suicide are real, they're overwhelming, and it's usually an indicator that people have either physical, emotional, spiritual pain, and they want the pain to end. So what I would say is I wouldn't get too much into the argument about the fact that, yes, is somebody able to make decisions about their own life and death? Yes. The terrible thing about suicide, as many of us know who've lost someone, is that it's devastating on those of us who survive. So if we have a parent who died by suicide, our risk for suicide ourselves is significantly high. There's this tricky problem we see this in the teen population as well and as adults, and we've seen this in some active duty reportings of suicide clusters as well as within veterans, that whenever someone knows someone who dies by suicide, the group of people who know that person can have an increase in risk. And part of that is the complicated grief it leaves us with thinking that we were part of the problem, that we should have saved that person, that we have suffering around the fact that we survived and the other person didn't. So if suicide itself wasn't so complicated, we would have just one simple answer to that. But what I would say to someone who's heard a sentiment like that, I would validate it. I would remind you that you cannot make someone suicidal. So if someone's saying things like that, if they're talking about not wanting to live, if they're giving the examples that Melissa gave about wishing for death, if they're posting something on social media or texting you something, a premature goodbye, if there's something that just doesn't sit right with you, you should directly ask if the person is having thoughts of suicide. There's a myth that if you ask that question, the person will be more likely to say yes, or somehow you've planted the seed. We know based on research that's not true. You're just simply validating the suffering like our other friends today have talked about, and it allows the person to open up. And you need to give them space to answer though too. So I would say the course, this course, as well as our initial VA S.A.V.E. course, but this course does a great job of covering it as well, gives you the sense that you can ask these questions and handle the response. Remember that treatment works. That's the other thing we haven't gotten too far into. But I can tell you, I have worked with thousands of people over the course of my career from all walks of life who've been in crisis, and treatment works. There is hope. Thoughts of suicide don't have to be acted on, and there are things that we can all do to seek help. So then we want to help the person who has that sentiment that you said, Tina. We want to encourage them to help anyone access treatment. There is a shortage of quality evidence-based mental health care in this country. That is not, I don't think, news to anyone on the line today. But so it can be hard if you can't access VA care. It can be hard to know where you can find quality evidence-based care. We have some resource locators, and I heard Steve share that he has some resources through Elizabeth Dole's foundation as well. So I'll look for those and put them in the chat so you have a starting point. But I would just remind you that having thoughts of suicide is actually quite common. It's what we do in response to that, to motivate people to take the next step to seek resources that can really save their lives.
Thank you, Amy. It's a great opportunity to dig in a little bit deeper. And one of the reasons why I love this course is I call it my Be Human course, because I just think it gives us an opportunity to really just have a conversation with people, and we validate that by giving us succinct steps. So Meg, I'm going to go off script, but I have to, because we have so many great resources and individuals here from the Caregiver Support Network, and that's something you've built. And there's so much for those that are working with our caregivers, right? So this isn't just for our caregivers. It's also for those of us that are working with our caregivers. And I think this was the area that was the most rewarding for me when I came on board to Psych Armor was I found my fellow clinicians saying, thank you for giving us what we need to now run our groups. Could you talk a little bit from the lens of your community within VA and how they might be able to use this course? Actually, I say I kind of know that because they take it and then they do more with it through the resources that Amy's office builds. But could you talk a little bit about that from the provider's perspective within VA?
Sure, I think, and I think some folks have touched on this a little bit, but one of the really important things it does is that it gives us shared language. And that's really important. You know, I'm a social worker. I've worked with lots of people in crisis. I've had to ask that question, are you thinking about harming yourself, many times? And it is incredibly stressful every time you have to ask that question. So to have shared language, to have these kinds of courses is just incredibly helpful, so that a clinician and the caregiver and the veteran that they're caring for, everyone is using the same kinds of language. Everyone is talking about, validating feelings, and everyone is confident in asking specific questions. And there's several things that we're doing within VA to incorporate this into the work that we're doing. We are ensuring that this particular course is being shown at our caregiver summits across all of our medical centers. We have caregiver summits every year in every medical center, and this is a big focus of this year's summits. So if you're not involved with your caregiver support program at your local VA, make sure you get on the mailing list or reach out to that caregiver support coordinator so that you can become aware of when that caregiver summit is. And caregivers have already been trained in S.A.V.E. We've already been providing this, as Melissa said, to support them as they support the veteran that they're caring for. And so this is a really wonderful twist on the same concepts that they already understand to support one another. And it's just incredibly, essential as we think more and more about supporting the entire family. I know Steve mentioned the great work that's gone on around children, and thinking about caregivers who are also parents being able to have these kinds of conversations with their children, and to be thoughtful about the kinds of support that they're providing their children as well, and using these same concepts with their kids. The other thing I do want to mention is that we have put together a whole toolkit for caregivers around suicide prevention, and I think that's in the chat. And so I would encourage folks to take a look at that toolkit, and to encourage caregivers to look at that toolkit. Again, that's kind of directed towards caregivers and supporting their veterans. But if we think about this more holistically, around just supporting our friends and our neighbors, all of those same tools can be used in that same way.
Thanks, Meg. And thanks for tying that in, just because we see such a great conversation going on over here. I wanted to hear a little bit more. I'm being told that we have to go to the clip, but I have a couple of things just real quick. Steve, Meg just teed you up for Hidden Helpers. In all of this conversation, with all the great advocacy that you're doing with the launch from last week, can you talk a little bit about how you see this starting to extend into this next role of our kids in Hidden Helpers? And then I got a question for you, Justin, before we go to the clip, because we just got to go there. Okay.
Yeah, Tia, thanks for that question. Something that's really, really important to every caregiver that's listening, VA recognizes, I think DOD's really beginning to recognize, caregiving isn't happening in a vacuum, right? It can feel like that when you're in your home caring for your veteran, but many of you are doing so with children, with a fully functioning family, with school obligations for those kids, games. You're trying to raise and succeed as an everyday American family. And so there's a lot of dynamics at work that we need to be aware of to support you effectively. And one of them is how we support your kids. And so we just released a study that provides the first time evidence-based information on the fact that there's almost 2.5 million of you who have children in your home, many of whom are carrying responsibilities of supporting mom or dad or their brother and their sister. I'm looking at Melissa, who's got a beautiful son at home, who has been a big part of the work that we're doing on the Hidden Helpers front. The Red Cross has made a commitment around a resiliency program that is going to be brought to bear to more effectively help families like all those who are on here today. What we've done is we're already translating. This is what we do at the Dole Foundation. We don't produce research projects like the one that Roxana did, or the one that Justin mentioned from RAND, or the one that we produced last week from Mathematica around children. We translate that into impact. So we've pulled a coalition together that includes S.A.V.E and the VA and Red Cross. We're 50 organizations strong, and they've already made 40 plus commitments, many of them government commitments from places like the VA and DOD, the private sector, to make real-time commitments to support families like yours. And you're going to start to see not only an acknowledgement and an embracing of your family model, you're going to start to see an earnest effort on the part of government and nonprofits like ours and others to recognize the role that your children are playing, to connect them with their peers, and to provide you more resources and support for that thriving family unit.
So the social worker in me is very happy about that, because you talk about the entire system. So important. Thank you, Steve.
We have, Tina, we need a systemic approach to be successful, right?
Yes.
We can't be
Yes.
symptomatic.
Yeah. We have a lot of clinicians in our chat. So I know that this is resonating and is going to be applied straight to practice. So before we go to the clip, because we all need to go to the clip, Melissa, I'm saving one question for you from our group till after. Justin, I just don't want to leave anything out from USAA or USA Foundation from the conversation of, we've talked about why your commitment into this work and this education. Steve's talked a lot about the commitment around research and future. Is there anything else that you'd like to add from the foundation's perspective in terms of preventing caregiver suicide, really the suicide prevention conversation leading forward, especially through these hard times in the pandemic and future?
Thank you, Tina. One of the things that we try to be really conscious of with our philanthropic grant making at USAA and through the USA Foundation is that the military community is not a charity case. The military community is not broken and in need of fixing, in need of repair or charity, but rather the military community is a huge source of strength for our nation. And military caregivers are a huge source of strength for our nation. And the military experience for many families and many of us on the line today, the military experience does have unique strains and stressors for service members, for spouses, for caregivers, for military children, and then correspondingly for Gold Star families. It's an incredibly diverse community, and it's an incredibly strong community. And when we look at philanthropic investment, we look at it through the lens of resilience and how we can help the military family unit endure the stresses and strains and realities of military life and military experiences, so that they come through strong and that they continue to serve their own families, they continue to thrive in their communities, and they have a bright future. And so, philanthropic giving at USAA is all about recognizing that military families need resilience. And the course that we're about to preview is another real example of how you can apply resilience principles to make it through tough times, to come out the other side and have a bright future for you and your family.
I love how you just made a beautiful transition to make sure that I stayed on time and we rolled right into our next part of our program. So this is a snippet of the S.A.V.E course. Now, just remember, this is just a preview. It's the teaser. You've just logged into your whichever device you go to. I don't want to call out Hulu or any of them. Just the snippet. Really, really excited that we're going to be able to share this with you right now. And just remember to go to our website for the full course. To my team behind the scenes, are you ready? Justin did such a good job getting us ready to go.
Military and veteran caregivers are those family, friends, and loved ones who provide care to our country's service members or veterans who were injured or who are ill. Whether that care is daily reminders to take medication, emotional support, or hands-on care for physical needs, caregivers provide critical assistance to those who served. This course is about them, our country's hidden heroes, our military and veteran caregivers. It's about the role we can all play in paying attention to them, really hearing them, and taking action that might save a caregiver's life. Every 12 minutes, someone dies by suicide in the United States. It's the 10th leading cause of death amongst Americans. Women attempt suicide 3 times more than men, and men die by suicide 4 times more than women. Military veterans, especially women veterans, die by suicide at higher rates than their civilian counterparts. But the story doesn't end there. There is hope. Treatment works. We can all take actions today to prevent suicide. Caregivers of those who served in the military experience unique stressors in their lives. Caregivers often describe their journeys, while very rewarding, as exhausting and isolating. Most of you who find yourselves in roles supporting these hidden heroes might think you know this about them. But did you know that in recent data, it suggests that caregivers are at an even increased risk for suicide? It's true. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention surveyed thousands of American adults in August of 2020, specifically to study their experiences during the coronavirus pandemic. 31% of unpaid caregivers for adults reported that they experienced serious suicidal thoughts in the previous month, compared to 3.6% of those who were not caregivers. Military and veteran caregivers might be at even higher risk. The Elizabeth Dole Foundation commissioned the RAND report entitled Hidden Heroes, America's Military Caregivers, and found that military caregivers reported symptoms of depression and anxiety at higher rates than other groups of caregivers, with 24% of them reporting thoughts of suicide since becoming caregivers. We hope by watching this course, you will be able to see the crucial importance of recognizing the signs of distress in the military and veteran caregivers in your life. Whether you work with these hidden heroes, they are your loved ones, neighbors, or you provide health care for them. Every one of us who interacts with caregivers has the opportunity to make a difference, to ask the right question, and to take the right action. Action that can save the life of a military-connected caregiver or of any person struggling with thoughts of suicide.
Woo, Melissa. How'd that feel watching you there?
Oh, I haven't seen that in a while. Very, very meaningful. Those statistics still hit hard though.
Yeah. And, you know, we were talking about this before everyone joined us, that in preparing for this, we're building this course, we were all in the middle of the pandemic and we were in shutdown. You know how many times we tried to go to the studio? And, you know, Melissa, I just want to say to you, you were in the midst of caring for your family at home. And we also talked about the epic storm in Texas and all of those things. Just beautifully done. I can't wait for everyone to see the other piece of it too, where you and Dr. Kraft bounce back and forth. But thank you so much for that. And you know, I know the work behind the scenes at the VA to allow us to partner and to do this is quite a privilege. It is, you know, definitely partnerships like this that allow that work to get done. So thank you. I want to, while I'm still on you and you're unmuted, Melissa, this is a little bit off perhaps of, or goes a little bit further than this content, but we did have somebody that asked around materials or resources for blended family. And I could have just taken that from the role of psych armor, right? But I think there's something to be said here where, especially when we look at caregiving families, they're actually very dynamic. And we've all talked about that. Is there anything, as we start to round out and close on this, I'm going to ask about resources from everyone's perspective here. But if you were thinking about that person who asked that question today about blended family resources, is there anything that you could offer in terms of what you see within your peer groups and where you send, around the different dynamics in these families?
Absolutely. And I think inclusion is key here. At the Military and Veteran Caregiver Network, we include caregivers of all eras, all relationships across all locations. And really speaking to, there's no one who caregives more or less, but a communal group of caregivers coming together to network, to share experiences, and to learn about resources that can support them. We actually, in our mentor, we have a peermentormatch.com where caregivers can put a profile up about their caregiving journey, who they're caring for. And one of the top questions that actually came out of our caregiver focus groups was about blended families and how that might look, whether it's a stepdad or a stepmom, or if it's a new uncle or a new aunt or sister or brother, no matter the relationship. Because it does come up often. There are lots of blended families in our community. There are lots of exes who are still caring for a former spouse with their caregiving role. And because relationships might deteriorate, not always does the caregiving. And so it's very, very important to include all caregivers, all walks of life, all demographics, to make sure that they feel included and not less than because maybe they're not married or maybe they don't have a blood relation. We see a lot of veterans caring for other veterans, your veteran family, as we like to call it. So just know that there is support for blended families if you're looking for legal resources, education opportunities, things for your children. All of those can be found in various networks like ours and also Hidden Heroes.
Thank you, Melissa. That was perfect. All right. So as we get to close out, I just would like to ask all of you, is there anything that we have not offered to everyone that's here today, just around resources that, they're currently there? Oh, I was going to say one thing, Melissa. Someone had mentioned about gym memberships. And I was going to say, you had an amazing Peloton that you enjoyed as your respite throughout COVID. I remember that, right?
Yes. So big shout out to Peloton and Wounded Warrior Project, who gave me a respite grant for self-care. And I specifically invested in that kind of fitness in for myself. And I will say, and I'm not someone, I have always preached about self-care, but not necessarily practiced it. This was a good opportunity for me. And I do encourage any kind of fitness, whether that's a gym membership, whether you can walk outside or find, sometimes you just lift soup cans, get some exercise. It can make a big difference, even finding 5 minutes of that for yourself.
Yeah, Brandy.
Could I also mention something?
Mm-hmm.
Just as we close out here, we talked about the systems approach, and Tina, as a social worker, you mentioned your appreciation for that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a great program and campaign that we have ongoing in partnership with the VA and USAA called the Campaign for Inclusive Care, which is really a systemic approach to reimagining and care inside the VA, where families and caregivers are included from day one. From walking into the health facility to engaging with the clinician in the healthcare setting, we're training doctors, nurses, social workers, physical therapists, mental health therapists, and counselors all across the VA. And I want to thank Meg Cabot and her colleagues. Leah Christensen, I know, is on the call here today too. Been pioneers in truly a groundbreaking effort to bring this education and training to clinicians, so that as you go into the institutions for care, the institution that you all trust in, and I know you love at the VA, the clinician recognizing the role the caregiver plays from the very first moment and integrating that caregiver into the full care continuum. And we're getting incredible, Meg, you can validate this, we're getting really incredible responses from clinicians about the value of that training, and great survey results from caregivers who are seeing in the regions where this has been implemented that they're seeing a change. And so that's why I talk about our comprehensive, systemic, and evidence-based approach to supporting you. It needs to be like it has been for your veterans over the course of decades of care and the evolution of care and support for veterans. We're catching up, right? We're catching up to where we need to be to serve caregivers. And we're doing so with pioneering leaders like Meg and Melissa and great organizations like USAA and Amy and others who are leading the way. But we're all locked arm in arm to get this right for you from a system standpoint, a community and family standpoint, and an individual support standpoint. But you got to raise your hands and put yourselves forward to ask for help.
So Steve, that's why you're the board chairman, because you just closed this conversation out beautifully. I will add to that, because I always like to say when that ripple effect is right in front of us. Meg, you have Brandy Carney from New York that has followed your work forever and is absolutely has seen the Campaign for Inclusive Care work through just following your work, Steve. So I have to point that out, because the people that continue to show up for these conversations are that evidence in the moment that this is working. And so I am just so grateful for that. It keeps me inspired. To USAA Foundation, but Justin, we're the ones, we have phone conversations. You believe in all of us. And I have to thank you for that. This was something a couple years ago that, maybe people didn't want to have conversations, and look, thank goodness we did, because where we are today. This is such an incredible next step, the launch of this course. Thank you to all of you for your time, energy. Amy, keep going strong on your work. I know we have more to do. So I'm planting seeds here, because we have other things that we know we want to do. Steve's already planted the seeds. Meg keeps hearing us. So thank you everyone for believing in this work, for being a part of it. Everyone who has joined and been a part of the chat, you're awesome. We had some great conversations, really filled with gratitude. Please get in there. Take the course, use the course, come to us, we'll help you. By the way, Justin, we love how we get inside of USAA and use this stuff. You bring us into your employees and we get to do this, your caregiver groups. The last thing that I ask for everyone who has participated is afterwards, we are going to send you a survey. How do we know if our work is working? Is because we have to ask the questions and get your response. So please take the time for the survey. Let us know how this was. Should we continue? How will you use this in the future? We do really, really rely on that. So again, thank you all for being here. Thanks for making this happen, and look forward to working with everyone as we implement this work in the future. So congratulations, everyone. Right. Thank you.
Thanks.